welcome to enlightenment getting dumped in without the water wings, right? Like, oh.
And
That's how it
at
works.
that point, maybe you don't really care that much about your 2chan thread.
Welcome, everybody, to Unraveling the Unexplained. My name is Kat, and I'm a longtime astral traveler and spirit consultant. This is my brother John, who is a longtime fan of the creepy and the paranormal.
Hello, folks.
He has picked out a video for me to look at and react to. I don't know what it is, but we are about to find out together.
This week, we're digging into another classic Knee Channel thread, so settle in and get ready for a weird ride. On August 29th, 2011, a user started a thread on the VIP boards with the title, "I have two sets of memories." He revealed that he debated whether he should post the thread on the occult boards or the VIP boards, but in the end chose the VIP section. If you remember from other mysteries covered on this channel, the Vippers, as they're known, are notoriously difficult to troll and incredibly adept at uncovering the truth behind mysteries. The poster began by sharing a short story. According to him, very simply, he had two sets of memories, starting from the 4th grade of elementary school, lasting all the way up until October in the year he turned 19. That's about a full decade where, in his mind, he led two entirely different lives, and yet he clearly remembered both of them. He was unsure which was his real life, if that was even the correct way of putting it, or if it was possible that both were real. Here was what went down. In one set of memories, the original poster led a fairly ordinary life. He went to school like normal, all the way up to university. He was, at the time of posting, still a university student. His life was fairly normal with lots of friends, a girlfriend, etc. These memories seemed to connect directly to the life he was leading at the time of posting, meaning his memories of getting into university, moving to a new town, etc., all matched up with his current life circumstances. But then there were the other memories, and here is where things get strange. In this set of memories, he was swimming in a river with his family during the summer holidays of 4th grade when he slipped and got washed downstream. He was about to drown when someone saved him. It was a man who looked like a foreigner and didn't speak a language the boy could understand. The boy couldn't see anyone around that he recognized, and he'd been pulled out of the river in a location full of trees and plants. He also realized that the man who saved him was naked. The boy was so shocked that he burst into tears. The man tried to soothe him, but the boy couldn't understand what he was saying. The man then grabbed his hand and led him back to something somewhat resembling a village inside the forest. There were no real houses, but in the grass he could see things like desks, chairs, beds, etc. The man sat him down and drew a picture of a leaf that looked like it had liquid coming out of the roots. The boy tried to find his family but was unable to, and he was unable to understand the people living in the forest either. Yet the man had a wife and a child, and over time, the boy slowly adapted to life with them, taking up their nudist ways and slowly learning their language. The people used flowers to talk and describe things, and the location didn't have seasons as such, but rather, when a particular flower withered, that was counted as 1 year, and so on. Everything was related to nature, and nobody thought much about age or time. Then, one day, the original poster woke up in his bed and realized he had two sets of memories. One of his normal life and another of his life in the forest. Both seemed real, and if asked what he did the day before, he could recall both sets of memories clearly. Yet when he went and asked his family about that time he got swept downstream in the 4th grade, he discovered that his father had saved him. At least in this timeline. The poster revealed that he still remembered how to speak the language from his other life, but he was slowly forgetting it. He wanted to write some of it down before it was entirely gone, which naturally caught the attention of other users in the thread. The poster claimed to have asked one of his university professors about the language, but it wasn't something that existed on this earth. Of course, people asked him to record a sample of this mystery language, but he refused. saying he wasn't confident in his voice. He did, however.
Okay, like I understand that. Because we all know, right? We all know that, like, that hesitancy or that fear when you're trying to speak a language that's not your native language and you feel
Yeah.
like a little embarrassed about
Oh
it.
yeah, all the time.
Right, exactly. So it's, I get that, like a bunch of judgy people on the internet and they're wanting him to speak a language that he kind of barely like. I can absolutely understand being like, I don't
Maybe
know.
I'm not so hot to try and
Maybe I'm
record
not as
this.
confident about that as I feel like that I totally get. This is an interesting case, and again, presuming it's real, like it's really not fun if we don't assume that he's telling the truth. If he's making up stories, then he's making up stories. But it's an interesting case, and I have seen other cases like this posted where people are like, "No, I had a completely different life, and I remember it. Like I remember living it."
Yeah, like this feels a bit different than say a reincarnation deal. This is more like at some point an event happened and again his memories split into two different paths.
Well, again, I think reincarnation, like a reincarnation is a little bit of a misnomer to begin with because it plays into our sense of linear time structures. Like you were this other person and now you're this person, but really from the outside perspective or from the perspective of the other side, all of self is happening simultaneously. And it's really just a question of which part of self you're focused in on right now.
So in this case, you're thinking an event occurred that essentially his mind ended up intersecting with a different life, not necessarily a previous one or a next one, just a different one.
Yeah, that's one of the possibilities that's happening. Like, think of consciousness more like a streaming situation. Like, you're not necessarily this body or this linear timeline. You're more like a web page that's stored in the cloud. And basically, any access point, like any computer or any phone, you can perceive through any of the access points. It's just a question of which server you're going through and does that make sense what I'm trying to say?
Maybe like in the case of his current experience here, this is like he has two different tabs open and playing at the same time.
Yeah, sort of, or yeah, like the blinders didn't really get closed to one or the other. There was a timeline split, and in the moment that I mean, likely you're dealing with something closer to a near-death experience, NDE, where the trauma of falling into the river was a split, right? Like in one of the timelines, he probably didn't make it. And so being fished out of the river in a totally different, rather than going that direction, gets fished out of the river in a totally different, I mean, it could have been a completely different dimension, like an alternate reality. It
Oh
doesn't
yeah,
seem like it correlates to anything that we know in this
yeah,
timeline's
yeah.
history.
It's a different world with people just kind of being in nature or whatever and having a different language and
Yeah, and we'll listen to a little bit
yeah,
more of what he has to say about it before I kind of really,
yeah. There's more to see here.
yeah, get a feel for like what it is he actually experienced. But yeah, consciousness is it's more like you can tune yourself to different radio stations. It's like radios are broadcasting all the time. All of the stations are broadcasting. It's all out there. It depends on where you have your tuner set to what you're actually listening to. And that's controllable. You can change the station.
Yeah.
So it's if that's a easier way to kind of think about it.
However, share an image, which you can see here. Someone replied that the letters seemed somewhat familiar, which surprised the original poster. After a small diversion talking about his apparent death and murder in the other world, which led to him waking back up in this one, he shared yet another image with even more letters, which you can see here. One user was intrigued by the fact that he was writing these letters with a brush and asked why. Why couldn't he write them in pen? Another user suggested that because this language came from a nature-heavy location, where they used trees for everything, it was probably the closest he could get over here to conveying the letters. And it was at this point that someone shared where they thought they might have seen the letters before. The Voynich manuscript. It's basically a 15th century manuscript that may have been composed in Italy that no one has been able to decipher or even attribute to a particular author yet. It's full of fantastical pictures and diagrams of people and even plants that don't really exist. And this, apparently, was shocking to the original poster who claimed that, yes, this was the language he spoke in that other world. He volunteered the pronunciation for some of the text, in katakana, of course, but then immediately stopped posting. This annoyed other users in the thread because they had, apparently, just made an important and massive breakthrough. But the original poster returned shortly thereafter and claimed he was reading the manuscript, and this would obviously take time. Others pointed out that the manuscript was likely a fake to begin with, and so this thread was nothing more than a troll as well. Most people didn't care either way though, and just wanted to see how it would play out. The user returned with some more handwritten letters, this time in pen as requested. People pointed out that they just looked like English letters and numbers, if written a little messily. More and more complaints rose, and several people told him he should have posted over on the occult boards instead. To that, he agreed, but others wanted to know more anyway. Someone asked what people ate over there, to which he replied, grass. Everything was about living with plants and nature. When they woke up, they'd study grass. They'd use grass during their daily lives. Everything came back to nature and grass. All the people in that world had white skin, and he alone was the anomaly. He then gave a brief translation of one of the pages from the Voynich manuscript. He claimed that the opening sentence said something like, "These grasses have a something something proportional to the number of roots they have. The thicker they are doesn't mean the stronger they are, but knowing this..." Yet there was a lot he couldn't read, hence the blanks. Here, someone proposed a theory. If this world was A, and the other world was B, then perhaps they existed separately, and yet shared similarities, such as time and genetic structures. The original poster somehow snuck through to the other world through some anomaly, and whoever wrote the Voynich manuscript likely did the same, but the other way around. And the reason he couldn't understand everything in the manuscript was because languages change over time. Like it's sometimes difficult for modern speakers to understand their own language from hundreds of years prior.
It's fair.
Even if this is fake, it's fascinating, one person replied, which was the general mood in the thread. Yet the original poster soon returned and claimed to have finished reading the manuscript. "I understand it all now. I'm sorry to those who want to hear more, but please remember that some things are best left unknown." He claimed that Adam, Eve, and Voynich were all from that other world, but that was all he would say. He then quickly backtracked and claimed that the manuscript wasn't a mystery at all. It was nothing more than Voynich's scribbles. It wasn't an illustrated guide or anything like that. It was basically like his summer homework. Now, if you know anything about the manuscript, then you'd know that Voynich isn't the name of the person who wrote it. After all, that's still unknown. It's the name of the Polish book dealer who bought it in 1912. One of the users in the thread pointed this out and asked the original poster what all that was supposed to mean. Here, apparently, it all came tumbling down. People, in perhaps fake shock, declared their surprise that this was all fake. Others wanted the original poster to, at the very least, wrap the thread up in a compelling way, even if he revealed that yes, it was all fake. Initially, he ignored these comments and kept answering questions. For example, claiming that God was imaginary and there were no apples in the other world, but there was fruit similar to them. Yet, many of the fruits in that world were poisonous, as were the snakes. People continued demanding answers and wanting to know if the thread was fake. He claimed it wasn't, but that if he wrote down what the manuscript actually said, people would be shocked, and it was genuinely better if they didn't know. He claimed not to know anything about the future, but he had learned the meaning of space, the world, and life itself. He naturally couldn't say anything about these, as curious as everyone was, but in time, they would discover these things for themselves. Other users, of course, found this was a less than satisfactory ending to an otherwise intriguing thread. But the original poster then left a reply that had everyone stumped. The comment, entirely in hiragana, didn't really make any sense at all, other users asked what it was supposed to mean. And then it came. The original poster's final reply. I'm sorry. This was fake. Seems what I saw was just a dream. Please forget these memories. I thought I'd see if anyone understood the letters, and someone said they did, which was hilarious. It made me think about how to end a troll. I thought I'd do one by going fishing in a river. See ya. Of course, tsuri, the word used for trolling on Ni-channel boards, also has the regular meaning of fishing, meaning the original poster decided to use fishing at the river in his troll story about the manuscript. Wait, you're gonna troll us just like that using the Voynich manuscript? One user replied. I love code breaking, so that's why I noticed it. Geez. As some users pointed out, this troll was likely done on the fly. The original poster wasn't the one to bring up the Voynich manuscript, but when someone claimed that his letters looked similar, he went with it. The letters were similar, sure, but didn't entirely match. In this instance, he just got lucky. Or did he? After all, the story about the naked people and the plants and being washed away at the river all came before anyone spoke of the Voynich manuscript. So it was, perhaps, planned after all. Vippers are a smart crowd, after all, and he did choose to post there rather than the occult boards. Despite calls for the original poster to return for a Q&A, he never appeared in the thread again. What started as a story of two sets of memories and showing off some letters in a language that apparently didn't exist, then evolved into a potential code breaking of the notorious Voynich manuscript. Yet in the end, as usual, it all broke down, and the original poster claimed that, yeah, it was fake after all. Or was it? Did he really discover something in the manuscript that people would be better off not knowing? Some people wanted to believe that, at any rate, simply because it was more interesting that way. But what do you guys think about this one? Let me know in the comments below, and I'll see you again next time.
Okay, so we will post this, link this video in the description in the channel. You guys go check it out, give them a thumbs up, like their stuff.
They got a lot of stuff, most of it Japan focused.
Cool, yeah. Show them some love. They appreciate it, and so do we.
Yeah, no, I don't know about you, but I find that whole scenario to be kind of a fascinating one.
It is, and okay, so we acknowledging obviously it's entirely possible. Like, first of all, you know, 2chan is a place for
That
trolling.
kind of
Like,
thing.
it's totally the culture there, so it's understandable. Is it possible that somebody knew about this manuscript and set this whole thing up? Absolutely, it is, right? Like,
But at the same time, there's a part of me that almost feels like this is someone who may have been posting up something, and there's an interesting amount of... It's not the kind of thing that I think you would easily just kind of come up with on the fly, and the connection, because it would make more sense if it was set up if he sort of hinted at the Voynich manuscript earlier, but the fact that it kind of came out of nowhere and coincidentally seemed to line up with the letters he was writing and the fact that it was all kind of plant-based.
yeah, it's plain that either he knew this manuscript, had looked through it before and made up a story that was in alignment with it, and then just waited for people to connect the dots, or it was something he actually experienced and wasn't intending for some manuscript to turn up
It just happened to be connected to it.
to just happen to be connected to it. Yeah,
Because that manuscript in and of itself is kind of a fascinating thing. Like, where the heck does that come from?
I have no idea. I've never heard of that before, but you can bet that I'm going to be looking it up because it's really interesting. You know,
It's a whole separate deal.
right,
there.
right. This is a topic for another episode, right? Because where do you even get a manuscript that's plants that don't exist in a language that doesn't exist, like materializing out of Italy all of a sudden?
Yeah. Did somebody just get high and start drawing and writing stuff down? But
I mean, it's not unfeasible. I mean, look at the Lord of the Rings.
you can make up languages.
That's what I'm saying. Is dude wrote whole stories just so he had a reason to show off his made up language. So I mean, it's linguistics is a thing that people get into, and you know it can be a hobby. So that's not completely unfeasible.
But potentially just as much, it's not infeasible that somebody in the past could have seen something, whether in dreams or otherwise, of a different world with strange plants and a language like that.
Yeah, definitely there's, and even, even physics has looked into like the extrapolations of certain equations and realizing that, parallel universes is, while we don't have a way to test it, is mathematically sound.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So whether or not we slip in and out of them is a matter of what you believe consciousness is capable of doing. Like I've experienced other stuff like that, so I 100% believe that stuff like that is possible. As well as I get the impression, and again, you can take it or leave it. This is just from my meditation, my channeling, the stuff that I get through, that there have been other attempts at, out there in the universe, out there in existence, there have been other attempts at stabilizing a complex consciousness biological life structure. So some people translate that as Atlantis, some people translate it as, other star beings. It's, it comes through in a lot of different ways for people, but my impression of the situation is that it is desirable to be able to operate a complex consciousness structure such as the human personality and other similar personality structures in a physically stable environment like this one. And that other attempts at stabilizing a physical system capable of having complex consciousness structures experienced through that system has been attempted previously.
So maybe this whole plant-based world was one of those.
Yeah.
Now, towards the end, where the guy kind of like the end admits that it's fake,
Hmm.
a part of me, you've said yourself that you've had to deal with the unpleasantness of, the fear of like being thought of as crazy, when coming out about this kind of stuff, and that a lot of people have to go through that. I kind of noticed that with the progression of this, as the guy started talking about it more and more, and he started getting questioned more and more,
Hmm.
it's possible he might have started getting kind of uncomfortable with the whole situation, and that especially if he read through the manuscript and was like, oh, this whole book might prove that my whole experience was real and it wasn't some weird dream, but he didn't really know what to do with that, and people were getting more and more questioning of him, and he's like, this would be so much easier if I just said it was fake and left it at that, because this is a little
Right.
bit much.
And again, this sounds like it was a younger person, still university aged,
Yeah.
right? So, it's, I'm not university aged, and it took a lot of years for me to be comfortable enough with the things that I experienced to talk about them out loud and be like, if people think I'm crazy, they can, not watch. It's it's okay if you don't like what I'm saying. You don't have to listen to it, but I'm gonna be authentic in what I've experienced, and you know what I mean. So that it does take time to come to that in life. So, and if this is a younger person who like, thought he was gonna make a cute post out of an experience he actually had, but wasn't actually expecting it to turn up anything.
Yeah, and then it
Um,
started snowballing.
and then there's the pressure, the online pressure of feeling like you need to answer questions you don't have the answer to, and that's another thing to get over in life. I think it's also another hallmark of maturity when you can admit that, listen, I don't think anybody really knows what's going on with all of this, that like I can give you my conjecture based on what I've experienced, but I'm also happy to say when it's not something I have an experience with and I don't know. But I think that does take a maturity and a comfort level as well to be able to say, listen, I can't answer that question, I don't know.
Oh yeah, because you don't know everything, and like even in this case where they're like where he talked about Voynich as a person that wrote the manuscript, and someone was like, "Oh no, Voynich was just the guy who bought the book." Proof of fakeness, and the guy could have just been like, "Dude, you just called it the Voynich manuscript. I assumed Voynich was a guy. It's not like I read into the history of the manuscript or
Right,
anything."
which actually could lend itself more to the theory that he was telling the truth and never heard of the manuscript before.
Yeah, like he didn't, like if he had studied the manuscript in detail, you think he wouldn't make a mistake like that. But chances are, there's a chance maybe he just didn't really.
He didn't actually know anything about the
Yeah,
manuscript.
he just like, oh, there's a manuscript about all this shit that I've experienced. Let me read up on it. I wonder who this Voynich guy is. I guess he must have
Right,
wrote it.
right. As in, like, he hadn't really looked into it too deeply to actually know, like he pulled it up to try and read the script and didn't actually look into the history of the manuscript itself.
Exactly.
So,
The mistake almost makes it more believable than not.
Right. And again, he's posting in the VIP section of 2chan. Maybe he's good at stuff like, I mean, I don't know that, right? Like,
It depends on how you decide to interpret it. Like,
I
if
don't
the
know.
VIP section has a reputation for like debunking stuff, maybe he posted it there because he wanted to get genuine information on his experience. If he was just looking for a fun occult story, he could have posted it on a different board that would have not necessarily questioned it as much.
That's true. So maybe he was looking for,
Like, I had this weird experience. I want someone to tell me what the hell's actually going
maybe he
on.
had been low-key looking for answers and couldn't, needed time to deal with the answers he found.
Yeah, again, there was almost this kind of breakdown, like they said he posted a sentence in hiragana that didn't make any sense, and I get the feeling that he kind of had a lot that he was figuring out about the situation, and that was overwhelming for him. And in the end, he just wanted to close the thread and said, "Screw it. Okay, yeah, haha, it was all fake. I trolled you. Fishing," and leave. Exit stage left.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and again, I can only imagine what it would be like to find out that you're, all of your, I mean, I don't have to imagine that because I know, like, to come to the realization that, like, the stuff you're experiencing is real. And that, I mean,
It's a lot.
it has obvious implications for the actual nature of reality
Which
and
is
existence, right?
Which is
Like,
why I noticed that in the video he's talking like, if I tried to explain what I now know, I've just learned a lot about the nature of the world and life and stuff.
yeah, like I just figured out, like, welcome to enlightenment getting dumped in without the water wings, right? Like, oh,
And at
that's how it
that
works.
point, maybe you don't really care that much about your 2chan thread that people are, demanding answers that even you really don't have, or if you tried to explain them, they just wouldn't buy it. So again, maybe it would be easier to just say that the thread was fake and to peace out.
So it's, is an experience like this possible? In my experience, absolutely it is. Um, I was just watching a video the other day too, like, scientifically, it's theoretically possible. Like, they've run the math on parallel universes, and
Yeah,
it's theoretically possible. But as far as, from a scientific aspect, they're considering everything from a physical standpoint. So to their perspective, could we physically go to another dimension? No. Like, matter doesn't hold up well past the speed of light. And so to their mind, it's an unprovable concept. Mathematically,
a
it's
concept
sound.
that could work, but how are you going to prove it?
Right. It's an untestable theorem, basically.
Pretty much something that shares in common with much of what we discuss here is
Right,
that whether you
exactly.
believe it or not, it's very difficult to offer up solid proof of
Yeah.
something.
In my opinion, the answer to that situation is to just don't take the physical there. Like, use your go there with your consciousness. You can tune it to a different radio station. You can tune into any station you want to, but this sounds like an accidental situation, right?
Yeah.
Like a traumatic situation actually bumped the consciousness, and especially in a young child, right? We all have our response to this physical reality, we all have a fight or flight mechanism, right? Or a submit or a surrender, like a curl up in a ball and surrender mechanism. So for a young person to experience a traumatic situation, possible automatic response, the consciousness fled the scenario into whatever adjacent
Reality.
scenario was available energetically for them to get to. And then, you know, the system trying to correct itself, wakes him back up in another one after apparently the perishing of that form in the other reality,
Yeah.
to try and reset it back to what it was supposed to be, right? Okay, now you go back to this one. And again, and I've mentioned it before, I think, to you, that when we reality jump, when we timeline skip, you are stepping into that entire experience. So you get all of the memories with it. I think I told you it's like moving into the apartment next door. Like, you're moving into the entire furnishings, all the memories and everything that come with that become the experience. You're stepping into the whole experience of that timeline.
Yeah.
So a lot of the times it's not noticeable to people that it happens. For all we know, you and I were in a different timeline yesterday, but we have all of the memories of this timeline
No way
now.
we'd know the difference.
So most of the time you don't notice the difference. You have little twinges of it here and there, like when deja vu crops up.
Yeah.
But by and large, we don't notice it. But in this circumstance, it seems like
the dissonance kind of created the two sets of memories.
Right, exactly. There was the secondary set of memories was potent enough. And again, to come to an abrupt end in that life too is I would theorize in this situation that the trauma that happened that got him there to begin with, the trauma at the end of life scenario and the other scenario actually triggered, and there's a trauma trigger that actually brought those memories back and forth.
Makes
So
sense.
um, that would be my theory on how and why it happened, if it happened at all. It's
I mean, who knows? Yeah, it could just all be a fake thread, but stories like this are very interesting to delve into, and I thought this one in particular had some interesting bits to it.
yeah, for sure. I mean, it's 100%. Like if you look, and I don't know how easy it is for you guys to actually see the video while it's playing, but the language that's in the text and what he was writing there, I mean, had like especially the uses of eights and weird swirls, it's very very similar.
Yeah,
So, either he actually well researched it beforehand and knew what he was talking about, or like
really was a crazy
it
coincidence.
really was, somebody else who'd experienced a similar thing. I do find it interesting too that at some point he started talking about Adam and Eve and God and all this other stuff as well. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like I imagine that I imagine that suddenly getting thrown into
deep end of the pool, as it
the
were.
deep end of the pool, or the total, like the knowing of how reality actually works, is a lot to process,
Yeah,
you know and I do think that most mythologies, I mean, if you want to call them religions or whatever, um are based in the channeled messages and stuff that people were getting back in the day, right? So, is it possible that whoever was writing this stuff down about Adam and Eve or whatever originally had experience of this other reality where people were naked in a nature setting,
yeah.
and
It just kind
um
of ballooned out from there.
exactly. So, it's possible that there's a lot of bleed over and a lot of crossover in a lot of mythologies, because people who are channeling information or receiving messages from the other side are getting similar kinds of imagery or similar kinds of stories. It's all different ways to interpret similar messages.
Yeah,
But I also understand what he means, is that it's like if you're going to try and explain the concepts to people, it's hard to have the language to do that when it's not like you hear me a lot. I'm using analogies left and right trying to
you're
get
trying to
yeah,
describe a non-reality based, a physical reality based thing in a
yeah.
physical sense, and yeah, it's, I understand it ain't easy.
So it's awkward, and it's possible that, for a university student who really, hadn't had that much time to contemplate what all of it meant to begin with, much less find words or analogies or ways to describe what was going on. Like the whole situation was just way too much.
Yeah.
And it was like, I need to focus on my finals now. I can't be doing all this at this
So
time.
yeah, I'm just gonna. Sorry, fake guys.
Yeah. And I can understand the sentiment because, I spent a lot of my life pretending like stuff wasn't happening and just going to work, just doing the regular humaning thing, because
You still got a human.
yeah, humans got a human, and who are you going to tell? It's not exactly something you could bring up at the water cooler. Hey Joe, how was your day? Oh, it was great, except for the entire other life I lived in naked world of Eden flowers. How was your day? Like, I mean, you can't bring that up with people. It's not, so who are you supposed to talk to about
The
it?
Nichan board, apparently.
And even that is like, again, it becomes overwhelming quickly, because you're like, he, don't even have the language to really talk about the things that are here. So I'm going to disappear before scholars start asking me to translate ancient scripts and somebody attaches electrodes to my brain or whatever.
Yeah.
'Cause I don't need all of that in my life right now. So who knows, maybe as he gets older and, feels more stable and confident in himself, come forward and talk about it some more. But it's understandable, like, to retreat from all of that, because the internet is a vicious place, right?
Yeah.
So it is
All
what it
right.
is. That's what I got on it. Let us know in the comments what you think about it. Let us know if you think we're crazy, if we think we're on to something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you folks all have a good evening.
Like, subscribe, all of that fun-filled stuff, and we will see you next time on Unraveling the Unexplained.
Later.